While I was on a business trip, my parents moved my kids and wife into the basement. My wife informed me, and I confronted them. They said, "Your brother's wife and kids deserve a better place." When I returned, the unexpected happened. I will tell you everything. First, let me thank you for your continuous support. If you love stories like this one, support us by subscribing to this channel and comment where you are watching us from. It will be great to hear from you. Now let's jump into the details of what happened. My phone buzzed in the middle of a late-night meeting. I almost ignored it until I saw my wife's name. I stepped out into the hotel hallway, already bracing for bad news. When her face appeared on the screen, the first thing I noticed was the light. It was dim, yellow, and wrong. Behind her, boxes were stacked high like barricades. A child's blanket, my daughter's, was draped over the back of a folding chair. "Where are you?" I asked. Her voice was tight, like she was holding back tears. "The basement." I blinked. "Our basement." She nodded, and the image shook slightly as she shifted the phone. I saw my two kids in the background, sitting on the floor. My son clutched his tablet like it was a life raft. "What happened?" My voice was louder than I meant. Her lips pressed into a thin line before she spoke. "Your parents moved us down here this afternoon." I thought I'd misheard. "They did what?" "They said it's temporary," she said, her words clipped. "Your brother's wife and kids needed more space upstairs. Your mother said it was more appropriate for them to have the better rooms." The words rattled around in my head, like loose change in a jar, refusing to make sense. "So they just moved you? Without asking? Without telling me? Without telling either of us," she said. Her eyes flicked away from the screen. "They walked in with your brother, told me it was best for everyone, and started carrying our things down here. I couldn't stop them. The kids," she stopped, her throat working. I felt a hot surge of anger under my ribs. "Put Mom on the phone." She hesitated, then turned the camera toward the staircase. I could hear muffled voices upstairs, my mother's voice, calm and infuriatingly sweet, and my brother's deeper, smug tone. A moment later, my mother appeared on the screen. She looked pleased. "Daniel," she said, as if greeting me at a holiday dinner. "You sound upset. You moved my wife and kids into the basement." I said, each word measured heavy. "Don't make this into something ugly," she replied. "We're just being practical. Your brother's family can find their own place." I snapped. "You had no right." She gave a small laugh, the kind she used when I was 12 and arguing about curfew. "You're overreacting. They deserve the upstairs. It's better for the children." "My children are in the basement," I said, my voice breaking despite myself. "Just until they get settled," she said lightly, as though that excused it. The call ended abruptly. Whether she hung up or my wife did, I didn't know. My chest felt tight, my hands clammy. I stared at my reflection in the black screen for a long second before my phone vibrated again. A text from my brother. "Thanks for making room for us." There was a smiley face at the end. I didn't even realize I was gripping the phone so hard until my knuckles turned white. The rest of the night was a blur. I excused myself from the meeting entirely, telling my boss there was a family emergency. Back in my hotel room, I paced until my legs ached, replaying my wife's strained voice, the look in my kids' eyes. It wasn't just the basement. It was the message. The quiet, calculated message that my family could be displaced at will. That my position in my own home was negotiable. By midnight, I had already booked an early flight back. I didn't care about the project, the deadlines, or the fallout at work. I cared about my wife and my children sleeping under a basement ceiling while my brother's kids sprawled in their beds. I called my wife again before I tried to sleep. She whispered so as not to wake the kids. "They've taken over the living room," she said. "Your brother moved the TV to face their couch. It's like they think they own the place." My blood boiled. "Not for long." Her voice was cautious. "Daniel, don't do anything rash." But it was already too late for that. I barely slept, jolting awake every hour with new details I needed to address: legal, financial, logistical. At dawn, I checked my phone again. My brother had posted a picture on social media. His kids, feet on my coffee table, holding my son's video game controllers. The caption read, "New beginnings in a beautiful home. #family first." The comments were full of congratulations. My parents had liked the post. I felt something inside me lock into place, cold, deliberate, final. At the airport, I scrolled through my phone, searching for leverage. I knew my brother was careless, especially with money. I'd covered his debts more than once. My parents knew that too. They just never saw it as weakness, only as proof that I was the reliable one. The one they could tap like a bottomless well. The boarding announcement blared over the speakers, but my focus was fixed on one thing: reclaiming my home. On the plane, I drafted a message to my father. I didn't send it yet. It was just a list of facts, stripped of emotion. I own the house. They have no right to move anyone without my consent. The basement is not a living space for my wife and kids. By the time we began our descent, I'd added one final line. You've made a mistake you won't recover from. As the wheels touched down, my phone lit up again. Not my wife this time. Not my parents. It was my boss. We need to talk. Urgent. Something told me my brother's stunt might have gone beyond just stealing my living space. That was the moment I realized the basement was just the start of a much bigger betrayal. By the time I walked out of the airport, I'd already returned my boss's call. The conversation lasted 2 minutes, long enough to confirm my suspicion and set my jaw in stone. It wasn't just my home my brother had invaded. He'd been using my name at work. Daniel, my boss said, his voice tight. I got an email from a vendor you've never dealt with, confirming a payment arrangement you supposedly approved. Except you didn't. Your brother did, using your company account. The image of him in my living room, grinning with my coffee mug, flashed in my mind. I gripped the phone so hard my palm ached. And how exactly does my brother have access to that? That's what I'm asking you, my boss replied. Clean this up quietly, or I'll have no choice but to escalate it. The drive from the airport felt longer than the flight itself. Every mile brought me closer to a confrontation I knew would burn bridges down to ash. My parents had always claimed family above all, but what they meant was my brother above me. Ever since we were kids, they'd treated him like glass, fragile and precious, while I was the one sent out to bring in money, solve crises, patch holes in their perfect image. As I turned onto my street, I spotted my brother's SUV parked in my driveway, angled like he owned the place. Through the front window, I could see movement, his kids bouncing on the couch, his wife scrolling through her phone. I didn't bother knocking. The moment I stepped inside, my brother was there, leaning against the kitchen counter. He didn't look surprised to see me. If anything, he looked pleased. Back early, he said, glancing at my suitcase. Get out of my kitchen, I told him. Relax, he said, smirking. It's not a big deal. Mom and Dad said it made sense for us to be upstairs. Your family's fine downstairs. I stepped closer. And it made sense to use my name at work, too? His smirk faltered. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't, I warned. Don't insult me with lies. You've been signing things under my name. My boss called me on the plane. He tried to brush it off, but his eyes darted sideways, toward the living room, where my mother was sitting with my kids, smiling as if this was all perfectly normal. Daniel, my mother said, rising to her feet. Let's not do this in front of the children. I turned on her. You moved my wife and kids into the basement. You let my brother steal from me, and you think we're going to have a calm conversation about it. You're being dramatic, she said smoothly, a skill she perfected over decades. We're family. Family helps each other. I laughed, short, sharp, bitter. Family doesn't take over your house while you're away and shove your kids underground. Her voice hardened. Your brother's family is in a tough spot. You have more than enough. Don't make this ugly. I looked past her to my wife, who was standing at the basement door, watching everything unfold. Her expression was a mix of hope and fear. You've got 24 hours, I told my brother. Pack your things and get out. He raised his eyebrows, mock offended. And if I don't, then I'll make sure you regret staying. That night, I slept in the basement with my wife and kids. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to remind myself exactly what they'd done to us. The ceiling was low, the air stale, the thin carpet rough under my feet. My daughter curled against me and whispered, "Why can't we go back upstairs?" Soon, I told her. Very soon. The next morning, I started making calls. First to my lawyer, then to a locksmith. The lawyer confirmed I had every right to evict my brother, No lease, no rights. Nothing but my parents' misplaced sense of entitlement backing him. The locksmith agreed to come the next day. I went upstairs mid-morning to find my brother in my office, my private office, typing on my computer. "What are you doing?" I asked. He didn't look up. "Checking my email." "On my work computer?" "It's fine," he said with a shrug. "We're family." That phrase, "we're family," was starting to sound like a weapon. I stepped into the doorway and blocked it. "This ends tomorrow." He leaned back in my chair, stretching. "You're really going to throw out your own brother?" "Over a couple of rooms and a misunderstanding at work." "This isn't about rooms," I said. "It's about the fact that you think my life, my work, my home are yours to take. And mom and dad back you up every time." He smiled faintly. "Because they know I'd do the same for you." "No," I said. "Because they know I'll clean up your messes." But not this time. That night, my father called. His voice was colder than my mother's had been. "I heard you're kicking your brother out," he said. "I am," I replied. "You'll regret it," he warned. "Blood is thicker than water. You need your family." "No," I said evenly. "My wife and kids are my family. You and mom. You're just people who happened to raise me." There was a long pause before he hung up. The next morning, I walked upstairs to find my brother at the dining table with his wife. My mother was pouring them coffee. "You've got an hour," I said. "And then the locksmith changes the locks." He glanced up from his mug. "You really think mom and dad will let you do this?" "They don't get a vote anymore," I said. That was when my phone buzzed, my friend Mark's name on the screen. His first words: "Daniel, I've been digging into what your brother's been doing at work. It's a lot worse than you think." My friend Mark didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Daniel, listen," he said. "Your brother's been sending purchase orders from your email to a shell vendor called Blue Oak Logistics. The invoices look legit, but the EIN traces to a DBA tied to your brother's Consulting LLC." The word shell clicked something cold behind my eyes. "How much?" "So far? Mid-5 figures approved, low-6 pending." And he tried to update the vendor master this morning. Swap the ACH to a new routing number. "How did he get my login?" "Either he phished you or he sat at your machine while you were out," Mark said. "I can see device fingerprints that match your home IP and, weirdly, one from your parents' place 2 weeks ago. You ever log in there?" "Never." "Then he did. I'm sending you a packet, timestamps, IPs, screenshot of the vendor change request, and the DBA registration. You need to lock everything down." I glanced up the basement stairs where my kids were coloring at the little folding table. "I'm handling the house this morning. The locksmith's coming in 40 minutes. "Good," he said. "But, Daniel, this isn't just a policy violation. If he completes those transfers, your name's on it. You'll eat the audit. You cannot let a single payment go out." "I won't," I said. "Thanks. Also, heads up, I saw your brother's LinkedIn. He listed himself as acting operations liaison for your firm." My jaw clenched. Of course he did. "Everything all right?" My wife called softly from behind me. I muted the phone. "Yeah, I'll fix this." I unmuted. "Mark, can you be at my place by 11? I'm already in the car." I hung up and called IT. Password resets. Multi-factor re-enrolled. Remote session to revoke every remembered device. I pictured my brother upstairs, casually sipping coffee while I amputated his access, one credential at a time. When I came up, he was exactly there. At the dining table, scrolling through my laptop like he owned it. My mother stood at the counter, buttering toast for his kids. "Move," I said, placing my hand on the back of my chair. My brother looked up with a slow, bored blink. "Relax. I'm checking some emails." "From what account?" I yanked the lid down before he could answer. "No, don't bother." He lifted both hands, palms up. "We're family, Danny. Share a little air." "That line doesn't work on me anymore," I said. "Locksmith's in half an hour. Pack." His wife's tone went sharp. "You can't just throw children out. My children slept in a basement because you decided upstairs was more appropriate for yours." My mother didn't flinch. "We were creating harmony. You were creating hierarchy," I said. "And you put my kids at the bottom of it." She sighed, a small theatrical sound. "You always take things so personally." "That's because they happened to me." The doorbell rang. The locksmith. Broad shoulders, silent assessment, set down a toolbox like a verdict. "Front, back, Garage, office, I said. All new. My brother stood. You change those locks, you'll regret it. Get used to saying that, I told him. I'm not the one who should be scared. He leaned in just enough that I could smell the coffee on his breath. Mom and Dad won't let you do this. They don't get a vote. He stared at me a beat longer than was comfortable, then smiled without humor. We'll see. While the locksmith got to work, I moved quickly. I opened the safe in my office, flipping past passports, the stack of birth certificates, the folder of old tax returns. Reflex made me reach under the top shelf, toward the spot where a leather box used to sit, my grandfather's watch, the one my father had promised to fix and return years ago. The shelf was bare. I hadn't thought about that watch in months, but the emptiness sent a thin wire of anger through my ribs. I pictured my father's palm closing around the box for safekeeping, and that old, quiet transaction, as if family sentiment was a line of credit he could draw from whenever he wanted. Enough. By 10:15, a moving truck pulled up. I'd hired them at dawn. The movers were efficient and expressionless. They boxed what I pointed to and ignored the rest. My brother stormed from room to room, swatting at their hands like an angry toddler. You can't take that. Those are ours, his wife snapped, clutching a throw pillow like a talisman. They're mine, I said. Everything stays boxed by the door until noon. Then it goes to a storage unit. You can pick it up after you send me your new address. New address? My brother echoed. We're not leaving. You are. He laughed and walked to the living room, pulled out his phone, and started filming. Say hi to the internet, everyone, he announced, swiveling the camera toward my face. This is my brother, kicking out his niece and nephew. Any words for your fans, Daniel? I stared straight into the lens. Pack your things. My mother made a low, disappointed sound, the kind that used to make me scramble to fix whatever I'd broken. The difference was, I hadn't broken anything. I was repairing it. At 11, Mark stepped in, eyes flicking over the scene. The locksmith at the back door, boxes lining the hall, my wife shepherding our kids into the kitchen. You came, I said. I brought friends, he replied, lifting a canvas messenger bag. Evidence. We went into my office and closed the door. He dropped into a chair and opened his laptop. Here, he said, tapping the screen. Blue Oak Logistics issued 6 invoices in the last 3 weeks. The amounts stair-step, $9.8K, $12.3 thousand, $16.7 thousand. Testing whether anyone notices. Your e-signature is on the approvals. Look at the audit log. He zoomed in. The approval timestamps lined up with my trip to Dallas, a night I'd fallen asleep on a conference call, laptop open on the hotel desk. See the IP, he said. Home. Then another one from your parents' Wi-Fi. And this, he changed the vendor bank account at 7:14 a.m. today. I reversed it. You reversed it? I know people. I exhaled for what felt like the first time that morning. Thank you. Mark shook his head. Don't thank me yet. He also tried to add a user to your company Slack with your exact name, but a throwaway email. It didn't stick. But he's not just sloppy, he's ambitious. A knock. My wife's knuckles, soft through the door. Daniel? Your mother wants to talk. Tell her she can wait. It's about your dad. I opened the door. My mother's step framed herself in the hallway like a stage entrance. Hands folded, chin lifted, a perfect study in quiet authority. Your father's coming by, she said. No, I replied. He isn't. She smiled thinly. He's bringing paperwork you'll want to see. I turned back to Mark. Send the packet to my boss. Flag it confidential. Mark nodded. Already did. He replied. Handle it. Quietly. Good, I said. Then we handle it. The next move was surgical. I called the bank to freeze a joint account my parents had insisted on years ago for emergencies. I'd funded it. They'd used it. The banker hesitated until I mentioned fraud. Then the words compliance team made everything move faster. My brother drifted into the doorway, muscled a smile toward Mark. You must be the friend. You know, Danny here is overreacting. Mark met his gaze, bored. That's funny. I brought a present. He swiveled his laptop, played a clip, screen capture of my brother trying to change the vendor ACH. The cursor hovered, the form filled, the timestamp blinking. My brother's nostrils flared. That's illegal. So is forgery, Mark replied. My brother glanced at me. You went through my stuff? I secured my own. He stared at the screen another second, then looked up with that old, practiced innocence. It was for the family. We needed a little runway. You stole my runway. And I always would have paid it back, he said. No, you wouldn't, I said. You never have. He chewed his lip, then shifted tactics. You throw us out. Mom and Dad will never forgive you. I waited for the fear to rise. It didn't. I'm not buying their forgiveness anymore. He laughed, a single bark. Right? The ATM is closed. Yes, I said evenly. It is. At noon, the locks finished clicking into their new lives. The movers stacked the last box by the door. I handed my brother a printed notice my lawyer had drafted that morning. You have until 2, I said. Then the police will escort you out. His wife hissed, you wouldn't dare. Try me. They didn't move. My mother crossed her arms, chin a notch higher. We're not going anywhere until your father arrives. As if cued by sound design, another knock sounded at the front door, 3 heavy, confident raps. My father stepped in, carrying a manila envelope like a scepter. Son, he said, appraising the new locks with a professional's disdain. Let's not escalate. Already escalated, I replied. He held out the envelope. Then you should read this. Inside, there was a single-page document. A laughable use and occupancy agreement, with my forged signature backdated to last month, granting my brother's family temporary exclusive use of upstairs bedrooms and common areas. I looked up. This is garbage. It's sufficient to pause any eviction until a judge reviews it, my father said. If you call the police, you will embarrass yourself, and your company won't appreciate the scandal. The old pressure slid between my ribs. The suggestion that my career was a family instrument, tuned to their needs. I laid the paper on the table and folded my hands. Where did you get my signature? My father's eyes didn't blink. It's not about signatures. It's about understanding. It's about fraud, Mark said from behind me, stepping forward. And that's not the only fraud in this house. My father ignored him. He turned to my mother, who gave him a small nod, a silent exchange that said, our plan is working. Then he faced me again. Take a walk with me, he said softly. You and I can fix this like men. I don't need to fix anything, I replied. I need you to leave my house. He held my gaze. If you cut us off, we will not help you when you need us. I've never needed you, I said. You've needed me. And that era is over. Something in his face chilled, a lake icing over in seconds. He tucked the envelope under his arm. Then you force my hand. Force it, I said. See what happens. He tilted his head, then glanced past me, toward my office. His attention snagged on the open safe. He smirked, small, private. You're missing something, by the way, he said. I didn't move. I know. His smirk widened. We'll be in touch. He left. My mother floated after him, murmuring to my brother and his wife in a voice meant to soothe and command simultaneously. They didn't pack. They sat. They waited. 2 o'clock arrived like a gavel. I dialed the non-emergency line, gave my name, my address, my lawyer's note. The dispatcher's tone was neutral and exhausted. A car would come by. While we waited, my phone buzzed, my boss again. Status? I sent him Mark's packet with a short note. Brother exploited my access while I was traveling. Vendor change reversed. I'm pursuing charges. How's situation being handled? His reply came fast. Handle quietly. Be in the office tomorrow. We'll keep this internal if it stops now. If. The smallest word with the sharpest edge. The patrol car pulled to the curb at 2:15. 2 officers stepped in. Everyone spoke at once. My brother's wife sobbed about children. My mother pressed the forged agreement forward. My brother swore we'd discussed this last month. I showed the deed, the lawyer's notice, the new locks, the stack of invoices with my faked signature. One officer took notes. The other scanned the agreement, then looked at me. This isn't notarized, he said. It won't prevent you from asking them to leave. But we're not going to mediate a civil dispute. We'll stand by while they collect their things. If they refuse to leave, you can pursue unlawful detainer. My brother's face blanched. You're taking his side? The officer shrugged. We're not taking sides. We're keeping the peace. The peace was a thin, fragile thing that afternoon. It trembled as boxes slid down the hallway, as my brother's wife hissed under her breath, as my mother cataloged every supposed cruelty I had committed since adolescence. It trembled when my father didn't return, when no cavalry came, when the reality finally broke through entitlement like a wave through paper. By 4, their things were gone. The truck's door rolled down with a metallic bark. My brother stood on the porch, eyes flat. "This isn't over," he said. "I know," I said. "You still have to pay me back." He gave a humorless laugh. "We'll talk soon." They left with my parents, the SUV and sedan angling off my street like a retreat the driver refused to name out loud. Inside, the silence rang. My wife exhaled and stepped into my arms. Our kids, who had hovered like shy birds all day, glued themselves to our sides. I kissed their heads, salt and baby shampoo and the kind of relief that makes a man dizzy. Mark cleared his throat. "One more thing," he said. "You need to call the credit bureaus. Freeze everything. He won't stop just because he's out of the house." I nodded and reached for my phone. It buzzed first. A notification. Social media. My mother had posted a photo. A familiar leather box, open on a polished table. Inside, my grandfather's gold watch gleamed like an accusation. The caption read, "Some heirlooms belong where they are cherished. Hashtag family first." My thumbs went cold. Another notification stacked on top. An email from an unknown address. Subject line, "Final warning." The message preview showed the first 8 words. "Wire $50,000 by tomorrow, or we go public." I opened it. The email wasn't from my parents or my brother. It was from Blue Oak Logistics, and attached was a draft complaint naming me, personally, as the mastermind of the fraud. The subject line kept burning in my head. "Wire $50,000 by tomorrow, or we go public." I stared at the attachment, my pulse hammering in my temples. The complaint read like a legal document, complete with letterhead, docket number placeholders, and a laundry list of allegations: fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, willful misconduct. Each charge was dressed up in legalese that made me look like a corporate predator. They'd even attached screenshots of emails I had never sent, my signature block, my company's logo, promises of expedited payment to Blue Oak Logistics. It was careful, deliberate, and the tone wasn't desperate, it was confident. Someone was sure I'd pay. I called Mark. He answered on the first ring. "They're blackmailing me now." His tone didn't change. "Who?" "Blue Oak Logistics. They've sent me a fake legal complaint. 50 grand to make it go away." "Send it over. I'll trace it." "Do it fast," I said. They gave me until tomorrow. By the time I reached my office at work the next morning, the gossip machine was already turning. People avoided my eyes in the hallway. My boss's assistant wouldn't meet my gaze as she passed me a manila folder. Inside, printouts of the Blue Oak emails. My boss had them too. "Why am I hearing about this from compliance instead of you?" he asked, shutting his office door behind me. "Because I got it last night," I said. "It's fake. My brother and his cronies are behind it." His jaw tightened. "Do you have proof?" "Not yet, but I will." He leaned forward. "Daniel, I'm protecting you as best I can. But if this goes public before you clear your name, you'll be on unpaid leave while we review your conduct. And you know what that looks like." I did. It looked like guilt. Mark's text buzzed my phone. "Got a location on Blue Oak's server. You won't like it." "Where?" I replied. "Your parents' property. Same ISP as their house. VPN tunnel into a rented AWS instance in Ohio. They're hiding behind an LLC agent in Delaware, but the payments route to your brother's business account." I read it twice, my fingers curling. They weren't just enabling him. They were active participants. My parents had let their home become the command center for a smear campaign against me. I fired back. "Can we prove it in a way that will survive court?" "Easily. But you'll have to let them think they've won long enough to pull full logs." That meant a performance. I showed up at my parents' place unannounced that afternoon. My father opened the door, eyebrows lifting in faux surprise. "Daniel, I thought you were busy at work." I said. Then Blue Oak happened. A faint smile tugged his mouth. "We warned you not to escalate with your brother. You made enemies." I stepped inside, ignoring the implied, "and you deserved it." "They're asking for 50,000. They claim they'll go public." He studied me, like a chess player checking for tells. "And what are you going to do?" I let my shoulders sag. "I don't know." His eyes flickered toward the living room, where my mother sat with her tablet. She didn't look up. Sometimes, he said, you pay to make problems disappear. I pretended to consider it. If I pay, it stops. Of course, he said smoothly. That was the confirmation I needed. Back in my car, I called Mark. They took the bait. Start the pull. Already running, he said. You've got maybe 12 hours before they realize the net's closing. The next day was a study in controlled fury. My parents showed up at my kids' school drop-off, all smiles for the other parents, acting as though nothing was wrong. My wife caught sight of them and physically stepped between them and the kids. I arrived just in time to hear my mother's syrupy voice. We just want to talk to our grandchildren. You lost that right, I said, stepping in. She tilted her head. Is that really what you want the other parents to hear? Every word was calculated to frame me as the villain in public. The other parents were already whispering. One pulled out a phone, and then my brother walked up from across the street, holding a small box. My grandfather's watch. He dangled it between two fingers like a fishing lure. Want it back, he called. 50 grand and an apology. We'll make it all disappear. Gasps from the crowd. Camera phones out. My wife's nails dug into my arm. Daniel, don't, she whispered. I stepped forward, closing the distance until I could see the smirk in his eyes. Enjoy your moment, I said quietly enough for only him to hear. It's your last one. His smirk faltered. That night, Mark called with the words I'd been waiting for. We've got them. Every file, every transfer, every fake email, downloaded, timestamped, and traced. You ready to burn this down? Mark didn't sound excited when he said, we've got them. He sounded like a surgeon who'd found the tumor and sharpened the scalpel. Walk me through it, I said, pacing my kitchen while my wife made quiet circles with a dish towel on the counter, wearing a groove into cotton. Server logs show your mother's tablet authenticated through their home mesh network to the AWS instance, Mark said. Your dad's desktop pushed PDFs, those fake complaints, through a print-to-PDF utility registered to his Windows license. Your brother initiated the vendor changes from your house and your parents, same browser fingerprint, and the bank account where Blue Oak wanted the 50 grand. Papers rustled. That's your brother's LLC, secondary owner. Your mother. I stopped pacing. My mother's on the account. She's co-signer. And there's more. Your father's scanner produced the use and occupancy agreement. It still has his device watermark in the metadata. It's kindergarten stuff. I've mirrored everything, timestamps and hashes. Chain of custody is clean. I closed my eyes. The quiet in the kitchen was the kind that comes after an explosion. My wife set the towel down. What happens now? Now, I said. We turn it around. How, she asked. Publicly, I said. They chose an audience. We'll give them one. I called my boss first. He answered on the first ring. I can end this, I said. Clean. But I need 60 minutes tomorrow afternoon. To do what? To make sure this doesn't leak as company scandal before it becomes family fraud ring. I'll control the room. Compliance can observe. You'll have my resignation in your inbox if I fumble. A pause. I don't want your resignation, he said grudgingly. I want this gone. Then give me the hour. He exhaled. You have it. Next, I called Detective Alvarez, the white-collar crimes contact Mark knew from an old case. I didn't embellish. Alvarez listened, asked 3 precise questions, then said, if the logs are as tight as your guy says, I can get a judge to sign for electronics at your parents' address. I can't promise cuffs tomorrow, but I can promise presence. That's all I need, I said. You sure you want to do this with family? They made it business, I said. I'm just replying in the language they understand. We chose the place carefully. The community center auditorium 2 streets from my parents' house. I booked it under the bland name Neighborhood Budgeting Seminar, and then I did the hard part, invited almost everyone who mattered to them. My parents' friends from church, 2 of my mother's bridge partners, my father's Saturday golf foursome, the neighbor whose approval my mother lived for, a handful of relatives who lived within driving distance. I even pinged the school PDA thread where my parents had made their concerned grandparents debut the day before. My last call was the one I'd been avoiding. I dialed, swallowed pride, and said, Mom, I want to fix this. Can we talk? Tonight. Community center. Bring Dad. Bring everyone. I could hear it, the little victory inhale. Good, she said, already approving of a narrative where wisdom had prevailed. We'll be there. Bring the watch, I added lightly, as if it were an afterthought. It belongs in the story. Of course, she said, if you're ready to be reasonable. I am, I said, and hung up before the tremor in my voice could out me. My wife looked at me when I set the phone down. You sure about doing it this way? No, I said honestly, but I'm done being the quiet one. She stepped close and smoothed my collar, a small domestic gesture that steadied my hands. Then let's end it. The auditorium smelled like multi-purpose floor cleaner and stale coffee. Folding chairs made a low plastic chorus as Mark and I arranged them. He set up a small projector and a screen. On the first slide, he'd written 2 words, paper trail. Subtle, I said. I was going to go with family business, but I didn't want to get sued, he said dryly, and then went serious. You ready? The first to arrive were the curious, 2 PTA mothers, a neighbor, the HOA president with a clipboard. Then my parents' friends drifted in, forming clumps of pastel and cologne, the murmurs low and sweet. My father walked in at the center of a little constellation of men, slaps on backs, jokes cupped in hands. My mother followed with her bridge table, glossy lips, controlled smile. My brother came last, late as a flourish, a small leather box in one hand. He held the watch like an actor holds a prop that will close Act 2. Thank you for coming, I said, stepping onto the low stage. My voice rang a little. I let the room settle. This isn't about airing dirty laundry, I began. It's about ending a lie. It's about prioritizing my wife and children over a narrative that has drained us for years. Some of you have heard things, posts, whispers. I'd like to show you something. My mother lifted her chin a fraction. It was the move she did when she wanted to control a room that wasn't hers. My father folded his arms, skeptical, comfortable. My brother tilted the watch toward me like dangling bait. Mark clicked the remote. Slide 1. A simple diagram. My company logo on the left, Blue Oak Logistics on the right, arrows between them. Dates. Dollar amounts. A line through the largest number, reversed. This is the vendor that tried to siphon money through my access while I was out of town, I said. You may have seen a post implying I was involved. I wasn't. Here's what actually happened. Mark clicked. Slide 2, server logs. Scrubbed of sensitive company info, showing IP addresses and device names. Mother IPD, DAD desktop. Parents WIFI. A timestamp overlay. Emails and documents were created and transmitted from my parents' home. The legal complaint, threatening to go public, printed to PDF from my father's desktop. The vendor banking changed from my brother's laptop on 2 different networks, my house and my parents' house. Murmurs. A few heads turned toward my father. He smiled thinly, as if indulging a child's magic trick. My mother spoke without raising her hand. This is very dramatic, Daniel. It's very documented, I replied. Mark clicked. Slide 3. Delaware LLC paperwork for Blue Oak Logistics. Agent info, an overlay pointing to the bank account. An enlargement of the signature card, my brother's messy scrawl. Secondary signatory, my mother's neat script, the tail of the Y in her maiden name looping like a practiced flourish. You could feel it land. A few of her friends looked down at their hands. The HOA president's pen stopped moving. My brother laughed, but there was too much metal in it. You went through my private business? I secured my life, I said. My father finally stepped forward, voice pitched to Carrie. Enough, Daniel. This spectacle helps no one. If you had come to us privately, we could have resolved this like family. We tried private, I said. You moved my children into a basement while you filmed my living room for likes. You forged my signature on a fake occupancy agreement. You helped create a shell company to steal from my employer. You shook me down in front of my kids' school for $50,000. A ripple of good God from the bridge table. You always take the harshest interpretation, my mother managed, but it wasn't a performance anymore. Her eyes were flicking, calculating exits. We were protecting your brother. He's had a hard time. So have I said. Except I earned it. Mark clicked. Slide 4. A short video, screen capture of my brother's cursor in our vendor portal, the bank fields changing, the timestamp blinking. A sidebar, reversed by compliance. Stop it, my brother barked. Stop showing that. You sent me a complaint naming me the mastermind, I said. Remember? You wanted an audience. This is yours. My father's voice flattened. Turn that off. I didn't. I turned to the row of PDA mothers instead. For the record, my children will not be near the basement again. One of them nodded, relief visible. The other looked at my mother like a mask had slipped. Daniel, my wife murmured from the front row, low enough for only me. Watch your breathing. I exhaled. I hadn't realized I was on a cliff inside my chest. Mark clicked. Slide 5. The text thread where my brother thanked me for making room. The caption from his social post. New beginnings in a beautiful home. Hashtag family first. My parents' likes, highlighted. And since we're talking family, I said, glancing at the leather box in my brother's hand, let's end this part too. I held out my palm. His smile returned. 50 grand and an apology. In front of your friends. Then the watch comes home. My mother actually nodded, as if he'd made a reasonable offer. I kept my hand out. Or, I said, you can hand me what our grandfather gave me, because it's mine. And I'll show you what I brought. What did you bring? My father asked, that edge back in his voice. A warning, a habit. Guests, I said. 2 plainclothes detectives stepped in at the back, Alvarez and her partner. A third person entered with them, a woman in a blazer with a laminated badge from the bank. Their arrival changed the temperature of the room in a way no slide could. Detective Alvarez introduced herself with a steady smile that said this wasn't her first family hurricane. We're here with a signed warrant to collect electronic devices connected to an ongoing fraud investigation, she said. We'll be visiting a residence on Maple Drive after this, Mr. and Mrs. Cross. We wanted to give you an opportunity to voluntarily surrender the devices now. Silence. You could hear the click of my father's molars before he spoke. This is an outrageous stunt. It's a lawful order, Alvarez said, unruffled. You can call your attorney while we inventory. My brother's chin went up. You can't take my laptop. It's evidence, she said. You can consent here, or we can do it at your house. Murmurs swelled. Friend whispers. The rustle of people pretending not to stare. The bank rep stepped forward. For clarity, she said to the room, the account receiving proposed payments from Blue Oak Logistics is not a vendor account. It's a personal business account. Ms. Cross, you are listed as a secondary owner. We have flagged it for suspicious activity. All assets are frozen pending investigation. My mother's mouth opened, then closed. For the first time in my life, I saw confusion overwhelm performance. You can't freeze our money, she said, and the last word frayed. It's my money, I said, and in the new quiet, the sentence landed like a gavel. And I'm done funding my own undermining. My father turned his stare on me, unblinking, the old cold lake in full winter. You think humiliating us in front of our friends makes you a man? No, I said. Protecting my wife and children does. My brother moved then, fast and small, trying to pocket the watch. Mark was faster. He stepped in, not touching him, just blocking the exit with a body that had carried heavier things than family grudges. The leather box hovered between us. Don't make this worse, Mark said. My brother sneered. It's already as bad as it gets. No, I said. It gets worse when you double down. Detective Alvarez held up a hand. We're not here for the watch. But if it's stolen property, it's not stolen. My mother snapped, energy returning in a flash of indignation. It belongs to the family. It belongs to me. I said, calm now. Granddad gave it to me when I got my first promotion. You borrowed it for a repair and never returned it. Her jaw flexed. We'll discuss that when you apologize. I am apologizing, I said, turning to the room. To my wife. For letting this go on as long as it did. I faced my wife, felt the weight of everything I hadn't said, and said the one thing that mattered. I'm done being their ATM. A murmur of approval I hadn't expected brushed the chairs like wind. Not cheers. Something truer. A neighbor I barely knew met my eyes and gave a single, decisive nod. My father took a step toward me, and Alvarez matched it, her badge a quiet boundary. He stopped. My mother looked like she wanted to speak and couldn't find the script. Mark clicked one last time. Slide 6 was a simple statement, white on black. From this day forward, my family, my wife and our children, come first. I didn't say anything else. I didn't need to. Alvarez broke the moment. Mr. and Mrs. Cross, if you'll accompany us to your residence. My mother reached for dignity and came up with a purse. My father straightened his jacket like you do before the cameras find you on the courthouse steps. My brother hovered, torn between staying to collect sympathy and leaving to shore up his devices. He picked wrong. They filed out under a halo of looks from the people who knew them best. My brother lingered just long enough to lean close to me, his breath sour with adrenaline. "This isn't over," he hissed. "You think you won because you embarrassed us? You don't even know what losing looks like." I almost laughed. "You do," I said. "You studied it your whole life." He swallowed, eyes hard, and left. The room exhaled. The PDA mom slipped out in a knot, whispering. The HOA president shook my hand like he was signing off on a variance. The bank rep gave me a card and a look that said, "Call me before you move anything else." Mark started breaking down the projector, whistling under his breath like a man who'd just watched a storm pass over a roof he'd fortified. My wife came up the steps, her hand finding mine. She squeezed once, a pulse of gratitude and warning. "You did it," she said softly. The leather box sat on the edge of the stage where my brother had left it in the chaos. I opened it. The watch lay there, gold and stubborn, and ours again. The second hand ticked, unbothered by people. I lifted it, felt the weight in my palm. My son waited in the front row, eyes hot and bright, understanding only that something true had shifted. I was about to snap the box shut when a shadow fell across the stage. A woman in a dark blazer stood there, not Alvarez, not the bank. She held out a badge I hadn't planned for. "Mr. Cross," she said, voice professional, practiced. "I'm with Child Protective Services. We received a report of unsafe conditions in your home and emotional endangerment of your children. I need to speak with them now." Everything in me went very still. Behind her, just outside the doors, I saw my father's profile as he climbed into his car, lips moving, smiling. The CPS worker turned slightly, revealing a case file with my name on it and the timestamp, 15 minutes ago, while my son's small hand slipped into mine and squeezed, trusting, as the room went cold again. The CPS badge glinted under the auditorium's harsh fluorescent lights. My son's grip tightened. My daughter edged closer to my wife, eyes darting between the stranger and me. "I'm here for a welfare check," the woman said, her voice calm, but practiced. "Your children have been named in a report alleging unsafe living conditions and emotional neglect. We need to speak with them privately." Every syllable was calculated to sound reasonable, harmless, but I knew a power play when I saw one. I stepped forward, shielding my kids. "When was this report filed?" She checked the file. 15 minutes ago. 15 minutes, exactly when my father left the building. Mark, still packing up the projector, muttered under his breath, "They're pulling one more card before the deck's gone." I forced my voice steady. "Ma'am, I'll cooperate, but you'll be speaking to my attorney first." She hesitated just long enough to make me think she wasn't used to that response. "You can involve counsel, of course, but the law requires." "I know what the law requires," I cut in. "I also know false reports are a criminal offense in this state. I've just had my parents and brother implicated in multiple counts of fraud, forgery, and attempted extortion. You'll understand if I'm cautious." Mark's phone was already in his hand. "On it," he mouthed, stepping into the hallway to call my lawyer. My wife's hand trembled in mine. "Daniel, they can twist anything." "I won't let them." The CPS worker and I ended up sitting across from each other in a side room, while my attorney joined via speakerphone. She asked standard questions: medical care, school attendance, household safety. My wife calmly answered each one, referencing pediatrician records, school performance reports, and our spotless home inspection from last year. When she asked to interview the kids alone, my attorney intervened. "Given the recent documented retaliation by certain family members, we request that all questioning occur with a guardian present and recorded. This protects both the agency and the family." The CPS worker finally relented, but I could feel her curiosity sharpening with each professional roadblock. She knew something bigger was playing out, even if she wasn't sure what. By the time the visit ended, She'd left with nothing but polite frustration and a signed acknowledgement that there were no grounds for immediate action. We stepped out into the parking lot, and the winter air bit hard enough to wake every nerve in my body. My father's car was gone, but in the oil-slick puddle where it had been, I could still see the reflection of his smile. Mark joined us. Your lawyer's filing a harassment complaint against whoever called CPS. They'll subpoena the source. They used an anonymous line, I said. He smirked, which still logs the originating number. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with three things in front of me: my grandfather's gold watch, the manila envelope my father had used to try to bluff me with the fake occupancy agreement, a printed balance sheet from the frozen account, every deposit I'd ever made into my parents' emergency fund over the last decade. It wasn't just money on the page. It was birthdays I'd worked through, weekends I'd missed, nights I'd let my phone ring because they needed something more than I needed rest. It was years of being the ATM they never had to thank. My wife came in quietly. The kids are asleep. I looked at the watch. Granddad told me this was about remembering where you came from. I think it's about remembering not to go back there. The next morning, I made 3 calls. First, to the bank, to close the joint account permanently and transfer the remaining frozen balance into a trust for my children. Second, to my boss, to confirm the fraud case was being wrapped with no stain on my record, and that I'd be overseeing the vendor security overhaul. Third, to Detective Alvarez, to check on the warrant execution. They weren't happy to see us, she said, satisfaction under her professionalism. We collected multiple devices, storage drives, and financial records. We also pulled the call logs from the CPS report. You were right. It was placed from your father's cell. That's now part of the harassment case. Will they be charged? I asked. Possibly. But that's up to the DA. You'll get a victim notification if it moves forward. 2 weeks later, a certified letter arrived from my parents' attorney. It was exactly what I expected, a demand for the return of the gold watch, couched in language about family heirlooms and emotional significance. I sent back a single sheet of paper. A family heirloom belongs to the family that cherishes it. My wife and children do. You don't. I enclosed a photo of the watch on my son's wrist, too big for him now, but someday it would fit. The last withdrawal I made wasn't from a bank. It was from them. No more deposits of time, money, or energy into accounts that only drained me. No more lending my name, my credit, or my peace of mind to people who'd never return it. Some debts aren't worth collecting. Some ties aren't worth mending. And some legacies are worth protecting, not because they're gold, but because they tick steady on the wrist of the person you're doing it all for. I buckled the watch on my son's arm one last time that night and told him the truth. This is yours now, not because of what it's worth, but because no one moved you into a basement to get it. He grinned, the way only a kid who's never doubted where he belongs can grin. For the first time in months, the only ticking I heard was the sound of my own life moving forward, without them. If you want to see more true revenge stories like this, where the underdog turns the tables and takes back everything, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my place? See you soon in the next story.